Hey everybody, Pete with Optics for Birding here again. A lot of you might have seen some of the more generic videos that we've done on the entire spotting scope series that Swarovski makes, namely their ATX, their BTX and STX eyepieces and their modular objectives. We gave you guys a full rundown of every product in that lineup. Now we're going to zoom in a little bit more and just talk about the binocular eyepiece called the BTX. So basically what the BTX is a binocular configuration for a spotting scope. It's one of the only ways to use a spotting scope at really high magnification without sacrificing, the ability to use both eyes. So with a traditional spotting scope like I have here, and again, this is the Swarovski ATX combined with their 115 millimeter, which is the biggest size you can get. It works just like a lot of other spotting scopes do, where you've got one eyepiece. You have the ability to crank the zoom from 25 to 60 or 30 to 70, depending on what objective you pair it with. And the main disadvantage with that is that you have to keep one eye closed, and there's all sorts of creative ways that people do that. Some people do the worst possible way, which I'm guilty of too, which is just squinting with one eye. So if you're looking through the scope for a long period of time and you come off of it looking like this, as soon as you open your other eye, you get a little bit disoriented. Obviously, it depends on how long you're viewing, but it's no secret that it's much easier to keep both eyes open when you're looking at something, especially for an extended viewing session. So the idea behind the BTX was just to give people that viewing comfort and give people another option in case they were going to be observing for a long period of time and they wanted that viewing comfort to stay with them instead of sacrificing half their vision essentially. So again, today we're going to be talking about the BTX. Let's get into it. All right, so to connect the BTX to any of the Swarovski objective modules, you're going to do it the exact same way that you do anything else. So right now, again, like I said, I've got the ATX on here. Just like with a camera and a lens, you've got a release button that you press, and then you're going to crank that counterclockwise, and it pops right off. Pretty simple. And then with the BTX, you just do the same thing in reverse. So again, just like with the camera and a lens, you've got a white dot lining up with a white dot. You just line those up with each other, give it about a quarter turn clockwise, and you're in business. So again, just to reiterate, the main advantage with the BTX obviously is that you're going to be able to keep both eyes open. The optical technology other than that is pretty much exactly the same as it is in the ATX. So namely, you've got the Swarovski optics, you've got the best quality glass that they can use, you've got the best coatings that they can put on the lenses, and on top of that, you've got field flattening lenses so that you get a nice distortion-free view across the entire image. So all of those are, basically what have given Swarovski the reputation that they have, because when you look through their optics, you can see it for yourself. With the BTX, there's a couple other caveats. So number one, I talked about the zoom mechanism on the ATX. That's the main and possibly only big disadvantage of going to the BTX, is that you do lose the ability to zoom in and out. Just a quick aside, a lot of people they are familiar with like zoom binoculars. I will tell you right now, it is never a good idea to get a zoom binocular, because it's really not impossible, but it's there's a reason that all the best manufacturers don't do it, right? It's really hard to get both of those eyepieces to zoom in and out in perfect sync. And when you don't have that perfect synchronization, what you end up with is one eyepiece at one power and the other at another power, and that is only going to give you eye strain, and all of a sudden you've got a bigger image in one eye than the other, and your brain is just going to want you to put the optics down. So the reason that Swarovski didn't make this a zoom dual eyepiece is because of that. And so with the BTX, you're going to be stuck at either 30 or 35 power, depending on what size objective you go with. On this really large 115 millimeter, the power is going to be fixed at 35, just like it would be on the 95. On the 95 millimeter, I should be clear, because we're getting into the weeds and talking about a lot of numbers. But on the two smaller objectives that you can pair with this, namely the 85 millimeter and the 65 millimeter, your power is going to be fixed at 30. So you really have to ask yourself, is that ability to zoom in and out like you would have on the ATX or the STX really critical for you? It's something that's much more common in scopes these days than it used to be. I should give you a little bit of history here and say, for the vast majority of the existence of spotting scopes, like a lot of people have actually preferred a fixed power eyepiece, because it used to be really hard to make a zoom eyepiece that zoomed in and out and maintained its quality throughout that zoom range. It used to be a lot harder to get a nice wide field of view when you had a zoom eyepiece. So for a long period of time, a lot of people were really just used to like 20, 25, 30, or 35 power eyepieces that had a nice wide field of view, but didn't have the ability to zoom in and out. And some people that are just getting into spotting scopes these days might think, well, why would I even want that? Well, Of course, even if you're fixed at 30 or 35 power, you're still way more zoomed in than any binocular is going to be without needing to put it on a tripod. So because so many people are used to those powers, like 30 or 35 or 25, whatever you might be used to, that actually makes the BTX really, really capable of a lot of long distance observation without feeling like you need to get that extra zoom. And, obviously I'm not speaking about a lot of cases. There are plenty of instances where you would want to be able to crank the zoom all the way up to 60 or 70 and zoom all the way out to 25 or 20 to get that nice wider field of view than this is going to provide. But really, 30 or 35 can be the perfect middle ground for a lot of folks. And a lot of people, when they look through the BTX, especially in our storefront, they're amazed at how much reach it has combined with the field of view. And they're like, yeah, it's a perfect middle ground. So there are a few considerations that you're going to have to make, just like with any pair of binoculars. So number one, the distance between any two people's eyes is usually going to be pretty different. So namely what I'm talking about is the interpupillary distance, which is the distance between the centers of your pupils, right? So any pair of binoculars that you buy, you're going to be able to adjust that distance by pushing the barrels in or pulling them out further apart. It's the same story on the BTX. So these little fins here, they operate pretty much the exact same way as any binocular. So that lets you adjust that interpupillary distance, and I believe it's the range on the BTX specifically is about 56 millimeters up to 74 millimeters, which is pretty standard for a lot of optics these days. The second consideration that you would have to make with any binocular is if there's any difference in visual acuity between your left and right eye. Typically a binocular is going to have a right side focusing ring called the diopter adjustment, and the BTX also has that. So think of this little ring as just a focus wheel for the right side only, and you're going to be able to use that on any pair of binoculars and the BTX to compensate for any difference in prescription between your two eyes. And of course, just like with the binoculars again, if you have eyeglasses, you're going to want to twist down the eye cup so that you can get your eyeball close enough to the glass to get the full field of view. Same story on the BTX. And then a lot of you are probably wondering, what are these other little gadgets up here? So this guy right here, which can come off if you don't like it, because some people don't, that's a forehead rest. Like I talked about at the beginning, part of the idea with the BTX is to give people a nice comfortable view if they're going to be staring at something for a long period of time. So having that forehead rest there really just lets you sink your whole head into the image. You don't have to move. It keeps your head from bobbing up and down as much, and you get a nice steady field of view. This other little gizmo here, that's actually a really cool little aiming aid that Swarovski came up with so that you can line that up with your target and get about as close as possible to being centered as you can without actually looking through the scope. So as many of you have probably experienced when you're trying to find something with a spotting scope, it's pretty hard to do when you're actually looking through the thing and you're so zoomed in. So a lot of spotting scopes have some creative kind of aiming aids so that you can use that with your naked eye, get it really close to your target, and then once you look through the scope, you're only making a little tiny adjustment. You're not wildly off base. Technically speaking, with the BTX, you've got all the light incoming on the objective end, and it's being split between your two eyes. So because of that, especially if you're digiscoping, you're only going to be able to get half the light that this thing is harnessing. So for that reason, a lot of folks ask us which one is the best for getting the nice bright image that I want in a picture. Really, the ATX is going to be better for that. If you're more of a casual observer and you don't care about getting National Geographic quality photos, hooking up your phone to the right or the left eyepiece of the BTX is going to be just fine. You're still going to get a nice image, especially if you're working with one of the larger objectives like this. But that is one thing to keep in mind, is that the BTX is not a big 35 by 115 pair of binoculars, because you really are getting all the light coming in and being split between each eyepiece. So just wanted to make that clear, because some people don't think about that, and all of a sudden they're like, why is this half the light transmission of the other one when I look at the spec sheet? So what I would say is about the view, if you're just trying to compare the image quality of like the BTX versus the ATX, as I already touched on, they do have the same optical technology in terms of the glass and the coatings and the lenses that are in there. So when it comes to the overall sharpness and the overall brightness, that kind of thing, I don't think you're going to notice a gigantic difference between one or the other. At the end of the day, it really comes down to deciding whether or not you need the viewing comfort that the BTX provides, so that you're not squinting with one eye or holding it closed with your eye, or with your other hand, excuse me. Some people even use an eye patch to get rid of that, but there's all sorts of creative ways you can make the single eyepiece more comfortable if you need to. So if you feel like you are going to be glassing for a long, long period of time and just staring at the side of a hill looking for deer, a lot of hunters prefer the BTX for that, because it just gives them that reach without making them sacrifice half of their vision. On the other hand, if you feel like you really need the ability to zoom in and out, or if you need the ability to get up to 70 power or higher, the ATX and the STX are going to be a lot better for that, because they give you that smooth zoom and you're not going to be stuck at one magnification and hurting for more or hurting for a wider field of view. So that said, there is one little workaround that you can use if you wanted to get more power from the BTX. I'm going to show you that right now. All right, so this little guy right here, this is the 1.7 magnification extender that Swarovski made for this entire series. So it works on both the BTX and the single eyepiece ATX or STX to give you that extra power if you need it. So like I said, the BTX does not have the ability to zoom in and out smoothly, but if you do feel like you need that extra power, you do have the ability to put this in between the objective and the eyepiece. I'm going to show you how that works right now. So if you think that 30 or 35 power is not quite enough and you want to boost that up to 50 or 60, you just take the BTX off, put it aside for a second. Then you've got the magnifier that attaches the exact same way as any of the eyepieces do. So once again, you got the white dot, lining it up with the white dot. Give that a quarter turn. And now you're going to do the same thing with the BTX on the back end of the extender. And voila. So obviously that's not as quick as just cranking this from 30 to 70 power like that. It's, you know, again, I think I've made the point that this has that advantage, but I did want to make this clear in case people are thinking they're stuck at 30 or 35 power. It's actually not the case. You can zoom into 60 or 50 power depending on what objective you're using again. And in theory, this is definitely not something I recommend because the view just gets too hazy and dark. But if you want, you can actually stack more than one of these extenders on top of each other and, you know, get to 200 and 250 power if you really want to, but not something I recommend. I'm just trying to show you how this works. So I think I've covered all the nuts and bolts of the BTX. If you do have any other questions, you're always welcome to reach out to us on social media if that's how you found this. You can also visit our website at opticsforbirding.com. There's no shortage of information there. And if you want to chat with us one-on-one, we'd love to talk about this stuff. It's our bread and butter. So give us a call at 877-674-2473. Once again, my name is Pete. This has been the Swarovski Optic BTX review. Talk to you soon.